Hi, welcome to this week's episode of the Respect Yourself Network. I'm Mike Isom, and like I do every week, I'm here reaching out to men. Wherever you are, whatever walk of life you find yourself in, if you're a man, this message is aimed at you. Now, of course, we invite our counterparts, our ladies in the world, to listen in as well. Maybe something in there of interest to you as well, but my main focus is to try to inspire and start a conversation with men out there. So my message is aimed at you. As I do every week, I try to come up with a topic that I think is important to me as a man, and I hope it's important to you as well. But what gave rise to this idea was the fact that I feel like in recent years, men have kind of taken a back seat to their leadership roles that they should be taking in their homes, in their churches, in their community. We really kind of step back and let other people do it and things of that nature. And it works as long as it's positive, but I think that the original plan that God set down when he created man and woman was for us to take a positive leadership role. And in life's society today, sometimes that's just not the case. So I came up with an idea called the Respect Yourself Network. The Respect Yourself Network reaches out to men every week with topics that I think are pertinent to our day-to-day lifestyle. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, whether you're a professional person, a lay person, a clergy member, whether you're between the ages of 20 and 30 or 40 and 60, it really doesn't matter. If you're a man, then this message should have something for you. Now, I guess I should clarify again, as I do every week, I don't claim to be an expert on any of the topics we talk about. I just have an opinion. The only thing that I can say with a whole lot of confidence is that I am a man, I'm a happily married man, and I am a Christian man. And everything I come to you with will be coming from that perspective. I know you're not going to agree with everything I say. As a matter of fact, I hope you disagree with some of the things, because what I want you to do is listen to what I've got to say, form your own opinions, but at least put it out there in your mind and in the atmosphere so that other men can benefit off of what you feel and how you think. Just asking you to pay a little bit closer attention. Respect yourself, respect others, and let's respect everybody in the same realm. The Respect Yourself Network, coming to you live and in color. Today we're going to be talking about being out in the weeds. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be right back to talk about our subject for today. Hi, and thanks again for tuning in to the Respect Yourself Network. This week's topic, what I want to talk to you about, is something that came to me one day, as they always do. I never know where these things come from. I'm walking around the track when I'm working out, I'm doing yard work, I may be in the kitchen preparing a meal, and something will just hit me. But I think this one right here, I was actually sitting in the choir loft at my church. We were doing morning service, and there was a lull in service, as there always is, where my mind started to drift off for a minute, and I had to get focused. But in that moment, I heard something say, you got to be careful now, you get out in the weeds. And I just wrote that down on my little program. I said, out in the weeds, what does that mean? And so later on in the week, the thoughts started coming to me. So what we're going to be talking about is what my interpretation of what being out in the weeds is all about. Now, in corporate America, out in the weeds means losing sight of the primary goals and objectives of the organization. Now, you know, you can have, whether it's a small company or a large company, whatever the situation is, you got a group of people that are brought together with all their talents and efforts to make something happen. So you sit down and you have a goals agenda. We're going to sit down, this is what we do. We make widgets. And what we want to do is we want to make a better widget. We want to figure out a way to get our widget more widely known, that everybody needs our widget, whatever the situation is. And we don't want to be stale in the industry, so we got to keep working on improving our widget. However, What happens is when you bring all these people in together, and everybody's intelligent, everybody's energetic, everybody has ideas. You come together, you start, brainstorming these ideas. What are we going to do? This is how we need to do. Everybody's got something they want to bring to the table. Well, sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we are having so many ideas without having any clear direction toward the success of that idea. In other words, every week we come together for our board meeting or whatever. And then, like I said, I don't want to take this and put it just in the upper echelon of the corporate world. Any organization you find yourself in and you're working within this structure, these ideas come to pass, and it can happen to anybody. But just for the purpose of illustration, let's go back to the widget company. Okay, we have a board meeting, and everybody comes around and sits around the table, and we brainstorm these ideas. Now, we got to keep what we're doing going because that's what pays the bills. But we know that change is always inevitable, that we've got to stay ahead of the game if we're going to. So what we do if we're going to be competitive. So we come in every week or every month or whenever we decide to do it, and everybody start putting these ideas on the table. Well, after a while, we got so many ideas, and we like this idea, we like that idea, we like this idea. Every once in a while, you just have to say, okay, it's good that everybody has all these ideas, but all we need is one that we can follow through with to try to get somewhere to make it successful. So how do you find the one? You find the one by brainstorming and asking the questions. But if you don't stop at some point and say, let's start forming a plan to make it happen, you find yourself out in the weeds. So I've heard that term a lot back from when I was in my professional capacity before I retired, and a lot of boards and things that I sat in on, and I heard this term, out in the weeds. We're really out in the weeds right now. We really need to refocus, rededicate our energies, and start talking about some positive goals and objectives that we can reach within a prescribed time. Now, I want to put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that in just a minute. In the restaurant business, now I don't know if I told you guys this, but at one time I was a law enforcement executive, but I did try to run a restaurant. I've got family members that are still in the restaurant business, so I knew a little bit about it, that as well, but they also use the term being out in the weeds. Now, in the restaurant business, being out in the weeds signifies you got a very busy shift. There are people coming through the door, your wait staff is being overrun by trying to serve people. Your cook staff is being overrun by trying to prepare the meals. Everybody is busy, but what's happening is because we're trying to do such a good job with each and every client that comes through the door, we're really not doing a good job with anybody. Where we try to serve them within 5 to 10 minutes after we get them seated, they should have a server in front of them asking their order, getting their drink orders, doing whatever. But now, that 5 or 10 minutes has gone to 15 to 20 minutes because we got so many people and everybody is busy. We out in the weeds. As a matter of fact, my son used to work at Red Lobster years ago, and they actually had a little buzzer or something that they would ring into the kitchen staff and let everybody know, hey, we're out in the weeds right now. We really got to hustle because we got more people coming in the door than we can comfortably serve. We're not giving everybody the same level of service, ergo, out in the weeds. Well, in life, we can also find ourselves being out in the weeds. Just as like in the corporate realm, and just like at the restaurant situation, we can get caught up in researching new ideas, better mousetrap, if you will. We're always trying to improve ourselves, and that's always a good thing. But we lose sight of our original goals and our objectives. In life, when that happens, you find yourself wasting valuable time. Days, minutes, hours, weeks, months that you can't get back. The problem that you have is trying to realize when you're out in the weeds. Because again, we always are promoting that thing about reinventing yourself, about making yourself a better version, the better mousetrap syndrome. But sometimes you can take that thing too far. In all things, moderation. So moderate even that idea of making yourself better. The process takes over the end game. In other words, you get so caught up into what you're trying to portray. You get so caught up into trying to make this thing better, bigger, faster, stronger, that you forget what you were trying to get accomplished in the first place. That's happened to me several times in my life. Not just in my professional life, but again, even in my marriage, even with my relationship with my kids. I remember several years ago when my children were still younger and some of them were still at home, I found myself caught up into this thing where I was out there hustling, trying to make more money. I was out there trying to, I was already working a full-time job. I had a business going on the side, but I was also out there promoting other things that were going on. And I found myself putting myself in a position where I was spending so much time trying to make money and provide for them that I was missing out on why I was doing it. I was losing contact with them. I wasn't spending the quality time that they were used to having with Dad. They were going through life issues. Like I said, they were teenagers, a couple of them were, and going through high school issues and relationship issues and all those things that having Dad there may have helped them along. But I realized that I'm out here, I go to work every day, I'm working 9 to 10 hours a day, I'm away from the house. When I come home in the evening, I come in long enough just to change or get a new direction. Then I'm out there promoting my business that I was trying to build at that time. And after several months, I'm almost ashamed to admit how long this went on before I realized that, hey, these kids don't need all this. Well, they do need the money, but that's not what their primary concern is. They need their dad. They need for me to be there to spend some time with them on a routine basis. So in other words, I lost sight of the objective. Sitting down talking with my wife, I say, I've been really trying. I want the kids to have the best education. I want them to be able to participate in all the extracurricular things they want to do. I want to open up their horizons. I want to give them better opportunities than I had when I was 16, 17 years old. Well, that was the objective. Good objective. I would hope that any, conscientious parent would want that for their children. But again, I got out in the weeds. I got out there and I got so involved in the how, I forgot to pay attention to the why. That's out in the weeds from my perspective. Now, again, that was in my personal situation with my children. I could take that thing on a step further and say even with my wife. You guys heard me talk about this on previous shows about put that woman first and how you always got to be in tune to her needs and what's going on with her. While you out there slaying dragons and putting out fires, why do you do these things every day? You do these things to be a support to her, to make her feel comfortable, to make her feel loved, needed, and appreciated, and respected. But we get caught up in the going out there slaying dragons. We're looking for fires to put out. We're keeping ourselves aloof and flexible so we can go in any direction wherever the emergency sets up or shows up. And guess what's happening in the meantime? She's sitting there missing your company, missing your conversation. You're not listening to her because you're just looking at her as part of the problems you're trying to solve. What happens? You out in the weeds in your relationship with your wife. You out in the weeds with your relationship with your children. You out in the weeds, and then it can even show up in your social activities. A couple of weeks ago, I had this question came up to me that I asked of myself, I should say. I said, all of my friends work. Everybody I know has a job except me because I'm retired, okay? And I say, and I always make a little joke about it. So one of these days we're going to get to where you are. And I always say, practice and pray. That's the only thing going to get you to. But my wife pointed out to me one day, she said, people don't always take that in a positive frame of mind. Sometimes it sounds like you're chiding them or you're bragging about the fact that you don't have to work and they do. But the point that I'm making is when we get together in these social activities, they're talking about their jobs. They're talking about the struggles they're going through every day. And it's made me reflect on back when I was the chief of police, or before that, the chief of detectives, or when I was running my own security company. Every time I got together in a social setting, all I wanted to talk about what was going on the job. All the time. Very good that you're dedicated to your job. Very good that you can take a little bit of it home with you every afternoon. But if you go too far and you start inundating every conversation you have with things that happen at the office, you guessed it, you're out in the weeds, even in that. So we're going to explore a little bit more of this thing on Out in the Weeds as we get a little bit deeper into this topic this evening. But right now we're going to take a little break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes to give you more of the Respect Yourself Network and Out in the Weeds. Hi, welcome back. I'm glad you're still with me. This is Respect Yourself Network. I'm Mike Isom, and we're out in the weeds today. Now, we've talked about a little bit of what my interpretation of being out in the weeds was about. But I want to go into it just a little bit deeper. Going back to that reference I made about the restaurant business and, you know, when you're trying to serve a guest, when you want everybody that comes through the door to feel special, like you're there just for them. Successful restaurateurs, that's what they do. Now, I know that because I read about being a successful restaurateur. I never was one, but I tried. Anyway, when each person walks through that door, you want them to have the same experience when dealing with you in your business all the time. Well, let's take that thing right there and take that metaphor of the restaurateur and put that back into your everyday life, okay? In life, you can become overwhelmed by trying to serve or please others. Now, we all know that's a good thing. That, you know, we should have that attitude of service, that we want to be acceptable and appreciated by others, and we want everybody to feel comfortable in our presence. That, again, just like the idea at the corporate thing, just like the idea of the restaurateur, these are good principles to go by. These are the kinds of things that we try to push and promote on our personal lives every day. But you can go too far. Once you go too far, you're out in the weeds. When do you realize you've gone too far? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. When the demand for your services are greater than your ability to provide, then you're out in the weeds. In other words, you become a people pleaser to the point where you're not really pleasing anybody. You're not pleasing yourself. You're not pleasing your significant other. You just going around. You can't be everything to everybody every day. Sometimes you got to just learn to prioritize. Sometimes you got to stop being a people pleaser and get back to that original goal and objective. I want to be a nice guy. I want to be a productive citizen. But I can't be everything. I can't be the dog catcher, the firefighter, the sanitation worker. Everybody has a role to play. When you find out what your role is in that particular circumstance or situation that you find yourself into, just be good at that thing that you do. Be consistent at that thing that you do. Otherwise, you find yourself out in the weeds. You're running around trying to please everybody all the time, every day, in every situation. And you know as well as I do. Some of us take longer to realize this than others. That's impossible. You can't please everybody all the time. Somebody is not going to like the way you handle the situation or some way that you carried yourself throughout that day, but you got to be positive about who you are and what you're trying to get accomplished. That original goal and objective that you set for your life and your lifestyle. If you get out there and you forget about who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, then guess what? You're out in the weeds. Research the clear path. Now here's an isomism. I've used this isomism before, but you'll find out that sometimes if they're good ones, you'll hear it more than once. But here's an isomism for you for today. If you create the game, then you create the rules. So if you just be you, there's no way you can lose. Isomism. That one was free. The next one's going to cost you. What do I mean by that? When you've got to set up the rules for your life. You got to go into this thing, whatever it is that you're going to do, no matter what you're trying to achieve, you need to know the lines in your own mind, in your own spirit, in your own heart that you're not willing to cross. And you can't let circumstances, again, trying to be that people pleaser and change your perception of where those lines are. When you start moving the lines to meet other people's needs, you're on that slippery slope that most of the time leads to you being disgruntled and disappointed in yourself. Now, you can be disappointed, you can be disgruntled at everything and everybody else, but one of the worst things in our lives to try to overcome is when you become disappointed in yourself. You know that if I coulda, woulda thing where you sit back and you look at a series of circumstances and situations that you know you could have handled better or you should have. Now, we talked about this in a previous show, too. Now, it doesn't take a lot of time for you to look back and get your perspective together. But if you sit back and start looking more behind you than where you're going, you know, that whole thing, that isomism about the windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror, we talked about that. But the whole thing is being disappointed in yourself because you was trying too hard to be something that you really were not. Or because you put too much emphasis on what people thought about what you were doing, when you were doing, and next thing you know, you didn't please them and you didn't please yourself. That's a very hard obstacle for men to overcome. And I'm going to tell you something else. Speaking from personal experience, is a very, very prevalent issue in our lives that we have trouble facing up to. You know, I go back to the Bible. Okay? I told you guys I'm not a theologian, but I always like to go back to Bible reference because I am a Christian man. So one of my favorite characters in the Bible was Job. And I may have told you the story before, but if not, I'm going to tell it to you again. Well, Job, was, faithful servant of God, strong man in the word and the whole 9 yards. But, the devil got involved, and, you know the story. God allowed the devil to test Job, and Job lost his children. He lost his livestock. He lost his business. He lost a lot of his friends. Things got really, really bad for Job, and Job stayed steadfast with his relationship with God and his worship and his reverence for God and all things God. But in my opinion, once again, I told you that it's my opinion, that was the only time that Job came close to losing it. The only time that Job kind of wavered or faltered in his resolve was when Mrs. Job started questioning. Get this. That lady in your life, you trying to please her. You trying to be strong in everything that she needs for you to be and everything she needs for you to accomplish. You trying to put that best foot forward. You don't ever want her to see you in a negative light. We don't deal with that very well, fellas. When Mrs. Job looked at him and said, maybe y'all just give up. Maybe, in other words, in my opinion, she lost confidence in his ability to maintain. Why don't you just give up? Okay? Now, we go on to take a spiritual reference out of it, and I could spend another 25 minutes telling you about my opinion about the spiritual thing, but the point I'm trying to make is it was very important to him how he was perceived by his wife. When she lost confidence, it racked him as bad as all those other things combined. So what happens to us in our day-to-day lives with our relationship with our wives, our girlfriends, in front of our children, those things are the things that we wrestle with that we never talk about. Okay? I got to make sure that when I come in the door in the evening, that when she sees me, that she's still glad that it's me that she's seeing. She still believes in who I am and what I bring to the table within this relationship. But what happens if you get so caught up and always trying to do what you think she's going to appreciate, and you lose sight of the objective of having a happy, productive, long-lasting marriage? You guessed it, you end up out in the weeds. You're running around, you can't get anything else done because you always second guessing yourself, wondering what she is thinking about what you're doing. Here's the situation, fellas. We all go through that. But do we talk about those things? We can talk about who's going to win the championship game, and we can talk about this, that, and the other. But when it starts talking about those things that really matter to us as men, let's be real for a minute. Can you get out in the weeds? Yes, you can. But when you recognize you're out in the weeds, you got to know how to fight your way back through it. I have some very good friends of mine, a little bit older than me, that fought in the Vietnam conflict back in the 60s. And they were involved in these jungle warfare scenarios. You know, they're going through and so when the recruits got in there, I wasn't in Vietnam. I'm not that old. I may look that old, but I'm not. But I had some friends that were actually there. They were young men when they went over, 19, 20 years old, as they usually are. But anyway, they would come back and they would tell me these stories, and I was like a sponge. I soaked up everything they said. But one of the things that stuck in my mind, they were talking about when they're going through the jungle, they're going out preparing to set up a base, or they're clearing an area so they can land more troops, or whatever it is they were going to do. They would have to go through these sections of the jungle. Well, you going through jungle with thick foliage all around and brambles and bushes and everything else, your natural inclination would be to walk on the path. So you stay out of the bushes, stay out of the weeds, walk on the path. Well, one of the things that got them in serious trouble is the enemy realized that about us. That was in our nature. We didn't want to go through the weeds. We wanted to walk on the path. So what did they start doing? Booby trapping the path. So when the few of us went down through there and got hurt, then they started training the recruits and everything. Never walk down a path. Make your own path. When you're on uncertain terrain, you need to find out which way you need to go. You need to make the way you need to go. In other words, you don't need to just follow the path of somebody, particularly if you didn't set that path. Now, all of that metaphor, all of that storytelling, I want to get to the point. The point is the path that you take needs to be your path. You can't always follow the path that somebody ahead of you laid. Now, what if that person had all the best intentions in the world, but you're not equipped to follow the path that they laid? So you find yourself faltering. You start looking at yourself and wondering why I can't do what I'm asked to do. Disappointment stalls the train. Well, what if that person that laid that path is not really your friend? What if that person doesn't have your best interest in mind, and he laying a path for you to follow that he knows is going to lead to your destruction? Sometimes it's not a bad thing to be out in the weeds. Sometimes it's better to be in the weeds than following the path of an unknown. Survival is not always the prize given to the fittest or the strong. But in most cases, survival is a prize reserved for the cautious, the considerate, and the cerebral. This is the Respect Yourself Network. I respect you. I pray you respect me. But above all, respect yourself.